Shall we try the Decadence Palette together, you guys, and just chat about a bunch of things about the Decadence Palette itself? I would really like to talk to you about the release of the Divine Rose 8 palette, and I can give you also like the tiniest bit of personal update in case you were wondering why I disappeared again the last few weeks. So I was minding my own business last Monday when the Decadence Palette was re-released, and I wasn't planning on getting it. But the thing is, every time this palette comes around, I get this like surge of desire, like desire to possess it, even though I own half of it, in various shapes and forms. And like I said, I was minding my own business. It was already around the end of the working day, and I was almost completely sure that probably the palette had already sold out. And then, just for shits and giggles, I decided to take a look-see on the website, on the Pattern Palette website, excuse me, and just see whether the palette is still available. Just, you know, innocently put it in my cart, just for, you know, some sort of masochistic purpose. And I did that, and then one thing led to another, and I decided that I'm going to YOLO it and purchase the palette. And I'm not gonna go down quietly. I'm gonna take you guys down with me. Bia and Flore. They enabled me. I'm gonna be honest with you, they enabled me pretty hard. I was sort of chatting with both of them about the release of the palette, the Decadence Palette I mean, because I knew Bia wanted to have that palette already for a long time, and she kept missing it upon re-releases. That's a really hard word for me to pronounce, I'm sorry. So I knew she really wanted the palette, so I think she had already bought it at the time that we were speaking. And Flora was also, Flora from Expression, by the way. I'm going to link her channel below. You should definitely check her out, and especially her Instagram, because she makes the most beautiful looks and she makes the most beautiful photos of her looks, like close-ups of her eye looks. Just go check out Flora. But going back, so I was also chatting with her on Instagram because she was also in the process of purchasing the palette, and she was having the same kind of doubts as me whether she should get it, but I think she was leaning more towards the YOLO side a little bit before I was. And then in the end, you know, it got to me. It's not their fault, honestly, it's my own fault, because I decided that I needed to have the palette and I was the one who put it in their cart. So in the end I decided that, you know, fuck it, I can't go through this every time she re-releases the palette. Apparently I gotta catch 'em all. So I decided to just purchase it, be done with it, you know, and stop thinking about it every time she puts it out again. So I did purchase it. I was really happy, actually. I didn't have any regrets after I pressed on the purchase button. And then, just as I was celebrating my glorious victory of finally obtaining the Decadence Palette, my husband was here with Nikola. They were playing behind me. And then, next thing I know, I turn around and I see Nikola right at the edge of our bed. This bed right here that you see, it's a relatively high bed as far as, you know, beds go. And next thing I know, he's sitting at the edge and he takes the wrong turn and he decides to fall off of the bed instead of, you know, stay on it. And of course he started crying, and we at first didn't figure out that anything was wrong, because he always cries when he like takes a bit of a more significant fall, let's say, which is totally normal. So he fell, he started crying, and at first, like I said, we didn't even notice that anything was wrong. But then by the time that he was sitting in the bathtub to have his shower before going to bed, my husband noticed that his left arm was just sitting completely still next to his body, and he wasn't doing anything with it. And we absolutely knew that something was wrong, we just didn't really know what. He was really not like even attempting to use it, so it was clear that he was in pain and something was deeply wrong. But you know, because he can't talk, you can't really ask him, hey, does it just hurt a little bit or does it hurt a lot? So we couldn't really make out whether it was just a little bit bruised or it was more serious than that. And it was right at the point we were going to put him to bed. So we called his grandpa, who is a GP, and he advised us to just, you know, put him to bed because he's probably tired of the shock and the pain and everything, and just come back in the morning and decide what to do based on how he behaves in the morning. So that's what we did. or at least that was the plan when we put him to bed at 7 in the evening. Around 9 or so he woke up crying. He was clearly still not using his arm, he was very upset, and then we called Grandpa again, and Grandpa advised us to call the like urgent GP line. Basically what they said is, look, if you get him out of bed to bring him to the ER now, it's going to be super traumatic for him, and even if the hand is broken, it really won't make a difference between now and a few hours later. So the best thing to do is just give him a little bit of a painkiller, let him sleep it off, come back to us again in the morning. So that's what we did. In the morning he woke up, he still wasn't using the arm. We called them back, they said come in. So we went, and then only one parent could go in, because of course, because of stupid COVID, they allow as less people as possible. Let me make a little short pause here and show you how incredibly shiny and gold she is. Look at this. I'm sure she's blinding the camera right now, but this is the limited edition Decadence palette that I picked up in this gloriously beautiful gold packaging. Now, what I want to do is actually, I definitely want to play a little bit with this shade, because this was the most surprising shade for me, or one of the most surprising shades for me in the palette, because it has the most interesting undertone to it. It's almost like a very, very light sage green gold kind of shade. It's such a surprising shade. I did not see that coming. So what I want to do is I want to actually pair it a little bit more with like the more neutrally type of shade. So I think I want to start putting that one in my crease, maybe this one in my outer corner, just to finish up the story a little bit more quickly so we can go to the fun part and actually talk about makeup. It was an excruciating 2 hours. They took an X-ray. They found out that Nikola has a little like fracture in his proximal humerus bone. So that's the bone here that connects your shoulder with your elbow, and right here where it connects to the elbow, it's not broken, but there was like a little fracture in there. So they had to put a cast. He has to be in a cast for like period of 3 weeks, and luckily things are going a lot better now with both of us. I was incredibly upset after the after that, because obviously seeing a 1.5-year-old with a cast is probably one of the saddest thing ever. But by now he is actually using his arm again, so the injured arm. He is much happier and things are going okay. So I think in the next 2 weeks or so they will remove the cast. Hopefully he will not have to go through a very long like revalidation period, and it will all be fine in the end, and he will probably not even remember that this ever happened. I don't know if karma was punishing me for purchasing the Decadence palette. I'm choosing not to see it that way. Anyway, I'm just going to close this story off because I don't want to continue talking about it. I want to talk to you about the makeup though. So I'm using this shade that's in the far right corner. It's called Enigma, by the way. And I'm putting that through my crease. As you guys know, this palette contains only metallic shades. And a lot of people feel quite intimidated to get it because of the fact that it contains only metallic shades. Personally, I don't really mind, because I find the metallics of Pat McGrath to be so incredibly easy to use for whatever purpose you want, that they just go beautifully in your crease. Like, yes, of course it's a metallic, so it's going to be a little bit shinier in your crease, but I really don't care. They blend out so easily, and sometimes they sort of blend out to like a very like satin finish, where you can't really tell so much that it's an actual shimmer shade that's being blended out. So I really personally don't mind using her metallic shades for work in the outer corner or in the crease. I'm going to dip into Divine Mink, so the deeper neutral shade, and I'm going to put that one through my outer corner here. I do have this shade in a single, and I think for now I'm going to keep both this shade and the single, because sometimes it's just easier to pull out the single if I want to pair it with something else, and I'm going to use Divine Mink in here when I want to use it in the context of this palette. I know it sounds really, you know, unreasonable, but that's been my whole story with this palette, being utterly unreasonable. So anyway, I do think so far this is looking pretty okay, and it's working out really easily. Like I said, her metallics just blend out so easily. I am going to put a tiny bit of Pixie Epoxy on my lid so that we can apply the metallic shade over it. So she's been teasing for a few days now that she's releasing something new, and there has been a lot of speculation as to what that new thing is going to be. It seems like it's again inspired by roses and the color pink. So what a lot of people, including myself, wrongly assumed is that she's going to be coming out with blushes, potentially a blush palette. Now, I will be honest with you, I have been craving for her to release blushes and like face products like bronzers and blushes already for a long time, and I really hope she does. I'm going to apply this shade, which by the way is called Sinful. I've been craving for her to release blushes for a really long time, but my personal wish has been for those to be in a cream formula. I really wish she will release bronzers and blushes in the cream formula, even though I'm sure that if they come in a powder formula, they will be that gorgeous, you know, gelée powder duo, which looks beautifully on the skin. So I'm sure that even if it's a powder, it will still be gorgeous. But I was secretly hoping for a summer release of cream blushes. So she teased, and in the end she told us that what she's coming out is actually a sequel to the Divine Rose palette. And at first I was a little bit surprised, because I was like, how much more can you really do with the Divine Rose theme? I mean, how far can you go? And then she, well actually not she, the first images were released by Trendmood actually, not by Pat McGrath herself. But when I saw it, I was like, okay, she surprised me and she blew my mind again. Because I actually really like the palette, you guys. I am going to obviously insert images and we're going to talk about the whole collection, but mostly I wanted to talk about the eyeshadow palette, because the thing that I want the most is the eyeshadow palette. I don't think I'm going to get any of the other items in the collection. There's a beautiful lipstick and some lip glosses, I think, and lip liners, but I am much less interested in those. So let's talk about the eyeshadow palette. What do you guys think about it? I'm sure there will be polarized opinions. I'm sure that the anti-haul community will once again whine about it, but I think it's fantastic. I actually think this palette is a great summer release. I am going to quickly grab this shade here, the shade Gold Standard, and pop it into my inner corners. So this Divine Rose 8 palette, so the summer sister to the original Divine Rose, is probably the most like original, unique summer release I have ever seen. I think it's so cool. If you look at the original Divine Rose, it is such a cool winter fall type of color story. It fits so nicely with the winter, which now makes me think that the time when it was released makes much more sense. And I do actually think that the spacing between the release of Divine Rose Original and Divine Rose New is just enough. It's about half a year, which I think is a really good time between the release of two of her big mothership palettes. And when I look at this new Divine Rose 8 palette, it's like the perfect summer sister to the original Divine Rose. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's juicy, it makes me think of watermelon and cocktails on the beach, and I think it's such a gorgeous summer release. You can bet your ass I'm there with my wallet ready to splurge when this palette releases, also because I really want it in the limited edition like pink packaging that it's going to come in, because that looks so beautiful, so stunning. I definitely really want to get this release and I'm really excited about it. I think I want to finish off the look with this gorgeous deep blue here, which is called Underworld. So I'm going to first apply one of my Kiko eyeshadow sticks underneath it as a base, just because that kind of always works better for me. This is the shade 17. Going to quickly blend the pencil liner with my little pencil brush here, before applying the eyeshadow over top of it. Alright, and now going to apply the blue eyeshadow over top. Having a bit of a hard time deciding what to do for like blush and bronzer here, because these tones are like so like weird to pair with blush and bronzer, do you think? I don't know, I'm really like not sure what to do. So what I think I'm going to try is I'm going to put this shade from Becca Cosmetics, is the shade Wild Honey, and I'm going to sort of like bronze and blush with it. So I'm just going to apply this shade as my blush and bronzer and see how that goes. But as I was saying, to me this Divine Rose palette is perfect. Now if you look at it, Of course, it's PET, so there's the standard gold in one of the like 4 top or special shade formulas. I was hoping that it would be like one of the duochrome shades, so that at least it would have like a little bit of a flip to it to make it something more interesting. But based off the name, I think it's going to be one of like the chunky super metallic shades. It is a very beautiful like shade of gold, and it goes really well with the rest of the palette. But I mean, for all the, you know, people that complain that Pat McGrath always puts a gold in there, I'm sure it's going to be, you know, yeah, I'm trying to remember the expression, but like literally if you translate from my language into English would be like the thorn in their eye, like the thing that pokes their eye is going to be that gold, I'm sure. Now, if you look at the rest of the palette, there are definitely a couple of shades which are extremely reminiscent of shades in especially her La Vie and Rose palette. It is true, I've also noticed that. I think they are nonetheless different shades, especially like the hot pink in the middle of the new palette is very reminiscent of the hot pink in the La Vie and Rose palette, but I have the La Vie and Rose palette and I can tell you that pink is a very subdued satin formula, and the one in the Rose and the one in the Divine Rose 8 palette looks to be a very punchy metallic shade. Now I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here as well, because I wanted to let you know that I found a way to use this highlighter palette which is absolutely perfect for me, and I learned that from Alexandra Anele here on YouTube and on Instagram. If you don't know, that's the girl whose beautiful eyeballs you always see showcasing Pat McGrath eyeshadows. And she said that she kind of always pairs these two shades, so the gold and the pink, to create a peach duochrome highlighter, and the peach duochrome highlighter is what I live and breathe. So what I actually always do now is I pair either of these two together with this one to get the beautiful peach shade. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today as well. I'm going to take a little bit of this one first, and over top of that I'm going to apply the pink to create a peach shade. We cannot not talk about the fact that there is this absolutely gorgeous VR shade which looks like not even a duochrome, it looks like a multichrome. It's the VR Extraterrestrial, I want to say that's what it's called, but don't quote me on it. That one looks spectacular, and I'm sure that it's going to be the shade that a lot of people are going to purchase the palette for and are the most excited about. Not gonna lie, I'm probably the most excited for that shade as well. I want to finish off the lips with something easy, so I'm going to apply this Peachy Nude from Suku. It is from their Extra Glow formula, and it's in the number 01. It's more like a tinted lip balm rather than a lipstick, but I really like it. Okay, so I am done with the makeup. I'm really happy with how everything turned out. I really love how the eyes turned out. I do think Decadence is a beautiful palette. That being said, like I mentioned, I already have half of it. I have these two shades in the Metamorphosis, I have these two shades as singles, and these 6 are the ones that I did not have, that I lusted the palette for, and eventually I bought. Now I wanted to make a very interesting remark. So when I was looking at pictures of this palette, at first I thought that this shade here, the one that we applied on the lid, reminds me very much of a shade that I have seen in her Metamorphosis collection palettes, and I wanted to show you that that is not the case. So the shade that I'm referring to is this one over here, which is a gorgeous, interesting shade of, I don't know, like beige, and I was convinced that it's probably going to be a dupe for the one in the Metamorphosis, in the Decadence palette, but as you can see, they are entirely different shades. This one has so much more neutral tones compared to this one, which leans much more like sage green gold. This one is such an interesting shade. Now, since I have already opened Metamorphosis, and you can notice that the two shades in here are the ones that are also in the Decadence palette, I wanted to quickly swatch especially the gold for you. The silvers are the same, and the silver is also like not the most interesting part for me, so fuck that one. But I do want to swatch the gold from the Decadence palette for you next to the gold from the Metamorphosis one, because they are different. So this is the gold from Decadence, and this is the gold from Metamorphosis. So you can clearly see that even these two shades, which are supposedly the same ones, have different undertones to them. So this is the one from Decadence, this is the one from Metamorphosis. They are almost the same shade, but I feel like the one from the Metamorphosis leans a little bit more like yellow honey gold, and this one has like the slightest green undertones to it. Now the other two that I have as singles are the shades Lapis Luxury and Divine Mink, and those I feel like are exactly the same that you get also in the singles. But let's just quickly swatch them. This is the single Lapis Luxury and this is the Decadence Lapis Luxury. Let's swatch the Decadence one first because I always start with that one. Okay, Decadence Lapis Luxury, single Lapis Luxury. If anything, I feel like the single is a bit brighter than the one in Decadence. So I'm definitely going to keep that around because I really love it. And now let's see Divine Mink. So we have Divine Mink from Decadence, Divine Mink as a single. Okay. Decadence single. I feel like those are essentially the same shades. So generally what I would say is that you get pretty much the same shades if you buy the singles from these or you have them elsewhere. There are like subtle differences, but I feel like for the most part, if you apply it on the eye, you're pretty much getting you're pretty much getting the same shade. Now another shade that I wanted to swatch from you from the Decadence palette. Now another shade that really surprised me from the Decadence palette that I quickly wanted to swatch for you is this one here, which is called Hedonistic, which looks like a beautiful red in the pan, but when you swatch it, it is actually the most gorgeous fiery orange-red duochrome. This shade is a duochrome, for sure. You can see how it shifts from a gorgeous red to like a fiery orange bronze. I really hope it's coming across on camera. So, do I have any regrets about purchasing Decadence? Hell no. And you probably gathered by now that when Divine Rose 8 comes out, I'm going to be right there on launch day trying to get the one in the limited edition pink rose packaging because I think it is absolutely beautiful. I love this release. Let me know what you think about it. What did you think it was going to be? Are you disappointed? I have to say that based on the comments that I got when that I read through before the announcement, it seemed like a lot of people were hoping that she's going to release blushes. So if she's anything but a smart businesswoman, she should listen to us and give us blushes. Anyway, let me know what you think about the new summer release from Pat McGrath. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you would like to see more of me in the future, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!